Hey everybody, we're back with Marriage Part 3. Today we're talking about aging. This is the MyPilgrimage podcast with David Glenn Taylor, with Seth Taylor and Sam Vert joining us again today. I think it's going to be a kind of a nice wrap-up for this little series we've been doing. We're talking about marriage and age. We're talking about relationships and aging, but we're talking a lot about our own selves in terms of our own bodies. And you'll hear us kind of having a little bit of an old man conversation about what we used to be able to do and what we can't do anymore, but also kind of how do you move from being this person who the physical is the most important to all of a sudden the mental and the spiritual kind of takes that prominence because we continue to mature and we continue to grow and age in our spirit, in our mind, where our body begins to diminish. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It's a good one, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so we'll see you guys at the end.
I had to soak a couple days ago. I decided to do a new workout, and I did 15 minutes of it, and then I spent 2 days in pain, and I had to soak in Epsom salts baths yesterday to try and get my. I was like, what was I thinking?
I went to wake surfing in December in Lake Washington.
There you go.
That's something that young men do.
That's fantastic.
It's kind of a Wim Hof thing. I was trying to channel my inner Wim Hof though.
Yeah.
When I jumped into the lake and I discovered there were tons of holes in my wetsuit, I was like,
nice. Wim Hof.
And then I just went, oh no, I can do this. Wim Hof. I can do it. And I did it until I couldn't feel my hands or feet.
Well, here we are. We're in the early morning. We wanted to, as a kind of conclusion to part 3, we talked about marriage as relationships as it were, in terms of our actual kind of just why did we get married and what that looked like for us in terms of our relationships to these other souls. And then we talked about kids in part 2, which we got a lot of good feedback because people, turns out like you've either been a kid or you have kids. You've done one or the other. And a lot of people have done both. And so a lot of people we got some interesting feedback where, again, totally different perspectives. And what I want to do is remember, this is kind of a closed audience. We don't advertise My Pilgrimage podcast to the whole world. We're just really talking to the My Pilgrimage group, maybe a few other people out there.
Well, it'll find its way.
It'll find its way to where it needs to find. But what it allows us to do is be really honest about our actual kind of current circumstances. So I'm just going to tell the story I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about my aging story in my relationship with my wife. And then kind of what we'll do is we'll tell the story about how it's currently going. Then we'll kind of go back through and we'll talk about what we see in the future for ourselves.
And again, to preface this, all 3 of us probably have a very different.
No. We're all going to tell the exact same story.
it's just there's a really, I think in this group of 3.
It's radically different.
A really helpful, triangulated kind of.
Totally.
We're all looking at the same thing from such a radically different angle. So I think it's
totally. And I gotta say, I'm a little jealous because I think I get a lot more feedback from regarding Sam's situation than anybody else's.
Right.
Well, that's really helpful because a lot of people going in midlife are going through what you're going through, Sam. Okay, so I have, as you guys have known over the last few episodes, people find out that, I have kind of this, I guess you could say a soulmate relationship. And then I have my true love and, I'm her true love. And we have this kind of lovely marriage. And we've been having, because of these podcasts, we've been having a lot of conversations about the nature of commitment versus kind of this mystic just coming together. What does it look like to have this institutional commitment of, the rings and the ceremony and then the license and the, we are a married couple and how does that kind of affect, the more mystic aspects of being soulmates, about being kind of being in love. When you tell someone you're in love, oh, I'm just in love. They go, oh, that's great. But there's not a kind of a defining characteristic for every one relationship to say you're in love. You just, it kind of defies words a lot, right?
Well, not for the 30-year-olds because they think they get it. You know what I mean?
If you're in your late 20s and early 30s, yeah, you tend to go.
Everyone in the mid 40s, they're going, oh, okay.
Yeah, right. That's why I don't know if you guys have ever seen Paul Rudd, that film he did, This Is 40. If you haven't, if you guys have not seen that, you've not seen that film, Seth.
I haven't seen it. No.
Have you seen it, Sam?
No.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this is kind of a bit of a revelation. You definitely need to watch that movie. Yeah, go seriously tonight, guys. The next time you have an opportunity to watch a movie, and This Is 40 is your film. There's this wonderful scene in the movie where, and I'll put it into the podcast here. There's this wonderful scene in the movie where him and his buddy, they go on bike rides together, right? It's just kind of their thing. And they end up at a coffee shop in LA. And they're at the coffee shop. And they're just having this conversation. They're talking about marriage, and they're sitting there in their little bike outfits, and they're just talking about how great it would be if their wives died.
This sounds horrible, but do you ever wonder what it would be like if you and your wife were separated by something bigger? Like death, like her death?
I have given it a fair amount of thought.
Not in any painful way, but just like a gentle floating off.
It's got to be peaceful. I mean, this is the mother of your children.
And then the new wife would be great.
God, I can't wait to meet my second wife. I hope she likes me better than this one.
And they're going over the fantasy in their head of losing the trudging difficulty of having to try and spark this relationship versus like the young thing and you could do this and you could explore all these other ideas, but they both love their wives. And then, and so they're having this, but in this classic way, they're having this conversation and trying to get, but they're totally going, yeah, that would be this amazing thing. I weirdly, that conversation, because I got married so young, I feel like in my relationship, I'm like 10 years ahead of things. So like I was having some of those ideas in my early 30s. Right. And I was like, where I was kind of going through the trudge, and I was also, I was dealing with porn addiction, and I was struggling to find my center of any kind and find any kind of self-esteem in that process. And having that idea that there was that fantasy lurking out there that said that the grass is greener somewhere else. I'm at a point now where I imagine a lot of people kind of getting in their 50s, because you talk to some people, married couples that are in their 50s that have made it through, they're kind of like hitting that kind of sweet spot, where maybe the kids are leaving for high school, they're starting to empty nest or whatever, they're starting to kind of find some of the freedoms that they haven't had in a long time. That's where we're at. So it's like we're starting to see this end of the tunnel thing, right? I got my youngest is going to be 12 this year, and I can see, and her and I start talking, we're having a lot of conversations about, when Mike is out of the house, we'll go do this, we'll go do that. We're starting to have those conversations, and it's really, really lovely. As far as the aging itself is concerned, the physical body stuff, I've come to a place where I'm really realizing I have to try and find a balance between spirit and body. And a couple of days ago, I was sitting here, and it was Sunday, and I just said, you know what, this week I'm going to kind of really kind of sink in on my day. I started scheduling my days very kind of regimented, because that helps me in my work, to get all the things that I'm doing done. But I also schedule in my meditation, make sure I get that in. And I was doing my meditation, and after a couple of days of meditating, I found that my physical body was screaming at me, because my physical body was saying, hey, you're doing balance now. Can we join the party? Because, that physical body is just still pandemic body, in which, there's not a lot of rules about food or, how many drinks I had at the end of the day or whatever. My physical body started saying, hey, can we be balanced too? And I was like, oh, and I'm over my normal weight right now. And I said, okay, you know what? We'll do that too. So I've implemented kind of essentially a more kind of a weight loss thing, a keto thing, and where I'm just kind of doing the carb-free stuff for a while, and I'm going to go back down to my normal weight. And I need that balance. I need the same, and my wife's the same way. And then we're in that relationship thing. I need to be the best 44-year-old version of myself right now. I'm feeling the call to that. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that kind of, there's like a little bit of I think it's maybe as we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in regards to the pandemic, we're starting to see that there's going to be a vaccine, there's going to be hope. You're definitely feeling that on the island for sure. Like everybody, because we've had really severe unemployment here on the island, and everybody's kind of feeling that, tourists are going to start coming back. And so, but as far as our relationship is concerned, it hasn't been a struggle yet. We haven't gotten to the point where I'm physically unable to do any of the things that I want to do, and like sexually can still do all the things I want to do. It's just, I have to find that balance, because like, if I don't, Maria's like, hey, you snored all night. She gets up and leaves the bed, and that's how that kind of goes, So anyway, it's not the most exciting story as far as aging is concerned. I'm actually really enjoying it. I I like this age much better than I did when I was 20s. I like it better in my 20s. I like it better in my 30s. I feel smarter, wiser, kinder, more patient. And I see the same thing in Maria. I see us, we're better parents for it. So I don't know. That's my whole story is about like where we're at.
I want to hear Sam's perspective. Sam,
Sammy gets to go next.
Well, Sammy needs to go, and Sammy is like Sam's in a position that maybe Dave and I, like, you know, you're bringing up the Paul Rudd movie. I both fantasize about what it would be like to move into the dating world, and I'm scared shitless of that.
I'm terrified of it. Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do it.
It's my worst nightmare. I know
But
Sam was sharing some of the stuff that's going on, you know, and dating apps and things like that. And I was just like, that terrifies me. It absolutely terrifies me.
You imagine? But at the same time, there's this like, man, that would be interesting though. Wouldn't it be fun to like?
See, I don't have the interesting part at all.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's just a total nightmare. I would not seriously, like I actually have nightmares like when I wake up where something happened to Maria. And then the second part of the nightmare is I had to date somebody. Like and it's not that I don't feel like I'm sure I could do it or whatever if I had to do it. But the truth is like, I really want to do life with my wife. I really want to do old age with her. I want to do that traveling around the world. And I do want to have our grandkids come to the house. You know, we have so many wonderful traditions at the holidays here. I want to see Maria as a grandmother because she will be amazing, especially if we have a granddaughter, which we have no, daughters. We have 3 boys. And I just want to see her with her granddaughter and sharing the cooking and making cookies and doing all. I don't know. I'm infinitely curious about that part of it.
What's interesting for Sam, and this I want to hear of Sam, is that you're having an experience that is very, very common. It's very common. Lots of men. I mean, and in the MyPilgrimage community, lots of guys.
Yeah.
Going through what you're going through. So I'm very curious about your perspective, what you've learned so far, and how you feel, like literally how you kind of just feel in the experience, goods and bads kind of thing. So can you share some of that?
I'll say this. I feel much more, can I say aged? Aged in a good way. I feel more mature now than I did even a year ago. Dare I say by the month, because, divorce won't force somebody to grow, but it will certainly present the opportunity. And that opportunity, of course, actually presented itself before the separation, which is what caused the separation. So it gets complicated in a hurry. But I feel actually, at 44 now, I feel much more balanced, complete, and aware. I feel very aware of what's around me, of the energies of the people around me, and of myself. And I've become much more of a watcher. That has become something that, kind of like what Dave said, I wouldn't trade for the the youth and the body that we had when we were younger. This is it's really a wonderful time of life when we're not broke down yet. We're just slowing down. Minds are still sharp. And I feel grateful to have these, opportunities to grow, as painful as they are. And I swear, if I could snap my fingers and make some of these situations go away, yeah, I probably would. But nobody gets out unscathed. And if you do, you've been hiding and you didn't really live.
Yeah.
So that's it's a funny thing. But I'll tell you this much also, is that at 44, I definitely believe that I do look and feel better than I thought I would at 44. I mean, back in our 20s, we look at somebody past 40 and we go, holy cow, you're old. And and it's just, and here we are and we go, okay, now what do you think now, sucker? But yeah, keeping the body moving has for this last year been a massive benefit to me. Yeah. And that's one thing I would tell anybody. It's like you want to stay, feel young and feel vibrant as long as possible. Keep moving. It is enormously important.
Yeah. Actually, can you speak to that real quick? What do you do? What's your workout?
So back in just a quick history, back in February, March, I started walking every day, and it was a brisk walk, but I still was not able to, I wasn't really in good shape for it. And I was doing about, I don't know, 17-minute miles. And I've been doing it now pretty consistently all year. The walking has slowed down in frequency, but I've made up for that with better performance. And I have actually felt my body becoming more, my fitness metabolism has increased to the point where I do not have to work as hard to maintain that level of performance. You know, when we're young in high school, 2 weeks of training and you're in peak shape, you can
Right.
just go. That takes longer, but you can still get to a place where your body can really perform. And that's what I have found, is that doing it regularly, sticking with it, it's become a great thing. And like I said, that the pandemic stuff is getting old, and I just want to sit around and, you know, drink whiskey. But instead, I put the coat on, go out for a walk, and I'm killing it. So
How far do you walk when you walk?
Right now I'm usually going about 1.5 to 3 miles, somewhere in there.
Sure.
And I got a pretty good hill by my house. It's straight as an arrow, about a third of a mile, and it is really steep. And I just power up that hill, and that's a good part of it. And I've been able to just rule it, honestly.
Yeah. As you're getting into the dating world, I know you've been talking about, like, you've been on some apps and you're meeting some different ladies and stuff. How you do? Are you intimidated by coming out of marriage, where you had one sex partner and one kind of person, to this idea now where you're in, you know, where you're having to you're going to have to deal with physicality, with sexuality, with all of that? Is that intimidating to you, or where's your thoughts on that?
The one thing I'm intimidated about is being okay with myself, because, you know, for 15 years I was in a marriage where there was this energetic interchange that defined not only ourselves in the relationship, but, you know, it leaks into ourselves as persons. And so myself, the view of myself was, I am the husband of my wife, and I am the father of my children. And those things took a larger role in my perspective than just me if I were by myself. So now I still have kids, but suddenly in the you know, relationship world, is like, okay, I'm just me now. What do I present to somebody else, and am I comfortable with that me? And do I share the weaknesses of that me, or do I just kind of let it all hang out? Or you know, how do I go about this? I don't know, because anybody I meet is probably going to be in a similar situation. They'll have failed relationships, they'll have kids, they might not know exactly what they want out of life. And while I understand that, there is a part of us that always wants to be so confident and so sure, and just kind of, you know, rule our walks everywhere we go. But if we're honest with ourselves, we're not always in that spot. And so now I'm facing that first and right up front.
Good on you, man. Still scares the hell out of me. I you know, I can see that you having to kind of face it actually is a maturing point. It's like a growth thing for you, where you go, like, because I can feel the fear inside of me having to, because my wife, she knows every inch of my body, you know what I mean? And I know every inch of her body. The idea of having to learn a new human scares me. It really scares me. You know what I mean? And it reveals inside of me some insecurity about my own physicality, about my own, you know, my baldness, and my, you know, my little whiskey gut, and my, you know, just all my body hair that I didn't necessarily have when I was in my 20s. You know what I mean? It's like that stuff. That's intimidating. Like, have you dealt with any of that?
Sorry.
No, in terms of are you looking at? I mean, like a lot of guys this is the typical divorcee in his midlife. He goes out and he gets a new workout, and he hits the gym, and he tries to get buff again, and he tries to go back to his 20s, right? He tries to go back and be that guy. when he starts dating and stuff like that.
Right.
But you're not doing that.
Well, I'm not a meathead by any stretch. But yeah, I've got a small weight set in my living room, and twice a week I'll sort of pump a little iron and make sure that my muscles don't atrophy. But yeah, as far as a return to the 20s, I mean, forget it. That ain't happening.
Right. There is something about like kind of going, this is me, right? Like, welcome, this is me. And like any woman who's going to end up with me has to accept this is me, because like the once you've been married for a number of times, you had the facade that you can be anything but you and hide it. You can't hide it from your wife. I mean, you just can't. You can't hide anything. So it's like there would have to be a prerequisite in that age to go, yeah, like if you don't like me, then you can't be with me, kind of thing,
Yeah, I'll say that self-acceptance has actually been harder because my ex, she actually did accept my body. We didn't criticize each other physically at all. That just wasn't part of it. So she accepted me, and little quirks, and like I said, all the peaks and the valleys and everything about it, and that was fine. But I always had some hangups about myself,
Right.
and so now it's like, well, oh boy, now I have to worry about that with somebody new. But then I think, oh, but do I really have to worry about that?
Right.
No, I don't, and I shouldn't, because like I said, if somebody should accept you for you are, and if they don't, guess what?
Right.
Take care of yourself. Move on.
Yeah. All right. So what about you, man? What's your midlife aging story?
It's funny. I was thinking about me and Sam. Sam comes over to my place a lot, and we sit out on my, whatever that is, porch or deck. I don't know what it is, but in my little apartment here in the city, and we smoke cigars. And he smokes cigars, and I pretend to, and then we drink whiskey.
You don't smoke cigars?
I smoke little cigarillos. I can't do the big ones, man. I just so I smoke little tiny ones.
Oh,
and he smokes the
man.
big fatties. But we were talking one day when he first started kind of into the dating space. And I was talking about, I was like, I said, what made us attractive isn't what makes us attractive anymore. The question is that, is stepping into this new world, what is attractive, right? What is attractive to a person, to a woman? And if what made us attractive then is what makes us attractive now, then we're not dealing with women, we're dealing with children, we're dealing just like we did back then.
That's well said.
And I was like, we're not good looking anymore. Like we used to be. We're not anymore. I'm saying that to him. Like, we're just not, we're not studs. We're not athletes. We're not those things. I said, but we have traded something. We've traded that in. We took it back to the dealership, and we said, can I have the better thing? And I think that's what we have now, is we have a very profound thing to offer the world, and offer people, and offer a relationship that we just didn't have back then. And maybe that's just part of it. Maybe, I think, it's funny because I spent so much time in Africa. They, over there in most of the cultures I've been around in East Africa, like there's an honor given to those that lose their hair, and then those whose hair turns gray, who lose the attractiveness. There's an honor given to it. There's a new language for it. There's a new greeting for it. In Kenya, in Swahili, if you're on, especially if you're on the coast where it's more traditional Swahili, you when you greet an elder, you use a totally different word than when you greet a normal person. It's an honored term. So
what term is it?
Oh, you would say shikamu. Yeah, shikamu mzee. So which is a greeting of an honored elder. And then they would say marahaba, which is thank you for your honored greeting. It's a different process.
Wait, hold on. So because we say mzee is like older man, right? It's a way of addressing the older man in Swahili, right?
An elder, yeah.
But then you say shikamu mzee is like an older.
No, shikamu is just a greeting given to an mzee.
Shikamu mzee.
Yeah, but it's honored there, and that's just something that's completely lost in our culture. The honored elder is lost in our culture. It's very interesting, actually. I was thinking. Slight tangent, but it connects. Okay. Yesterday I had a meeting with two people who are working on PhDs in applications for psychedelics, in healing therapeutic work. We were just chatting, and I just got this cool opportunity to just pick their brains about consciousness and plant medicine and that kind of idea. And the guy was talking about, I was saying, one of my big questions is what's going to stop this once something like psilocybin goes legal, what's going to stop it from just being another marijuana, just a replacement for alcohol, and in a sense. Yeah, he goes, that's the problem. He goes, plant medicine was meant to be administered by village elders. the wise elders. That traditionally in tribal cultures, like when people would use these things, it was distributed by those with the wisdom and those with the, and that's the thing. It was like, oh, another place where the loss of that part of our cultural context has created a problem. And I've kind of said, maybe being a village elder is an attractive thing. Maybe there's an attractiveness to it. And if you find a woman who's deeply attracted to wisdom and peace and strength and integrity and honesty and all those things that come with this phase of our lives, then we found a good thing. And at that level of maturity, we could probably move past bodies and hair and things like that. And it's funny for me. I mean, it was my greatest insecurity because I was a pretty good looking guy, back in the day. And I used to get I've had so much affirmation from women over my lifetime with that. It was losing my hair was a big struggle for me. And I finally come to that point where I was able to release my attachments to all those things. And I realized I'm actually a pretty attractive person now. I get more attention from women now than I've ever gotten in my life. And it's just because of my presence. It's a weird thing. It's just because of my presence, and it's because of that lack of attachment. And it's because there's no little boy seeking a mommy, and there's none of that stuff. There's just a man. And I think some women find it intimidating, and so no, my wife finds it very, very attractive. Right? She finds it extremely attractive. And I think that as she's become a woman and not a little girl, I find that very attractive in her. But I'm starting to understand what you're saying, Dave. Like how they always say, yeah, the best sex happens when you're in your 50s, and I'm like, oh,
come on.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand that. Yeah, we used to be like, whatever, Now I get it. There's this thing there's this synchronous thing, and there's a profound dimensions and depth to the entire thing. Yeah. And what's interesting about where Sam's at is that he's living in both these worlds, where he's bringing that new understanding and that profound opening that's happening inside of him with that into new relationship. Can it be done? Yes, absolutely. 100% it can. We don't have to start at like at square one when we're in our 20s. We're all sitting around worrying about what our bodies look like. And if that's the kind of person you run into, then don't do it. But that's, unfortunately, that's what the dating apps are. The dating apps are an addictive thing that are 100% aimed at that. The reason Tinder is such a success is because you've got older people, who are still children,
right?
Swiping. And it's the little kids in us that are seeking that type of affirmation because we don't trust that there's anything that will actually bring something to us. I had this guy, he was 53 as a client. This is like just a few months ago. Christian guy, evangelical.
Is he a MyPilgrimage guy?
No.
Okay,
no.
Good.
No, but but he's really good guy, really super, super good guy. But he ran in sessions and he's going through his third divorce. And he's just like, so how you feeling about it? He's like, well, I'm on Match.com, and he said, I really met some nice ladies this week and had some good dates. And I'm like, yeah, what was that like? And we've been the whole thing we've been talking about is every Christian I ever work with, I'm trying to get them to actually become a Christian, right? That's the goal. Take the Christians, make them actual Christians, right? Which means like a spiritual experience, actually moving into what it is to walk in the steps of Christ, right? Actual relationship with the Spirit. And he was just like, yeah, I met some nice ladies. And I go, yeah, well, what's a good date? How does that work? And he's like, and the whole thing was about, can we talk about skiing, things we have in common, skiing, will you like movies, things like that. And I'm going, I was like, I just went, hey man, can I ask a question? I said, yeah. I said, you remember Einstein's definition of insanity? He's like, yeah, you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. I'm like, yeah, right. I go, does this apply? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, you got to do something, right? And I go, just go with me on this for a second. I go, is God real? Well, of course. I go, okay, does God have a plan for your life? I'm going through the 4 spiritual laws here. Yeah. All right. And is that plan love? Yeah. Do you desire a relationship with a woman? Yeah. Do you think God has some knowledge of that? And yeah, of course. Can you trust that? I'm just like, well, yeah, but you got to do something, right? And that's where that thing comes up, is that most of our mentality around spirit is the idea that God helps those who help themselves. So when it comes to relationships, we can't trust that God knows that, sees that, understands that, and it's a part of the.
Right. Right.
it will be brought to us because we're so bad at waiting. That whole Psalms thing that you see with David, King David, when he's saying, wait on the Lord, wait on the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
That idea that we can wait and that it will be brought to us, that our heart's desire will manifest it for us is something that's completely lost on us. So we hunt instead. We go out and we hunt, which is that kind of tribal survival, ego-driven mentality. And so these apps are created for that process. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying it's wrong at all. I'm just saying that it's not necessarily necessary. It's not.
Right.
It's one of those things. I think Spirit can bring that and would allow for that. And I think that the challenge for us is what Richard Rohr puts us to in that book, is moving into a spirituality that has a profound mystery and depth to it, that we allow that to be the primary operating system for our lives. And how does that drive that entire thing? And for me and my wife, in our aging process, it's 100% that we are casting ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper into a mystery. And even in our relationship, David, you started this conversation by talking about what does commitment look like? I mean, we're starting to kind of go, what does unconditional love look like? And it seems that unconditional love changes the definition of commitment. It starts to shift it pretty radically, because all of a sudden, everything you think, everything you feel can be said, known, seen, and accepted. And it becomes this process of just letting, like, our relationship is defined by release and letting go.
Right.
And it's become a really fascinating experiment in how does that affect a relationship? Because we're still sleeping next to each other. We're still in love with each other, and growing deeper in that. We still have all this kind of, we're still having this really beautiful, intimate thing. And yet it feels more and more and more like there's no contract. The contract, it seems to be dissolving, where it's just love. So yeah, that's the aging thing is it's just growing in depth and dimension, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I miss being able to run and jump, and I do. I miss hair. I miss cutting hair, like going in and going, hey, what's David Beckham doing nowadays? Let's do that.
Right.
I miss certain things about it. But man, I would not trade it for the world.
Right.
And I can't wait for my 50s.
Maria and I had to go down early yesterday morning down to the water because Peahi's hitting right now. It was like 60 feet yesterday, right?
Whoa, nice.
And what'll happen is when it gets that big, and this is the famous Jaws wave here in Maui, which is out on the east side, northeast side.
Yeah.
But when it hits that side, when it hits that big, there's a wraparound effect that kind of comes into the channel on the other side where our boat is. And so it'll create kind of a funky south swell. And we didn't have any trips running yesterday, but we wanted to go down and see if we need to get the boat down to the harbor, to a safe harbor, to get it out, because our mooring is out and exposed, right? So our boat's somewhat exposed in the bay. And so we went down, still dark. It was like 5:00, and we're just sitting on the beach, and we're like, get down there, and it's pretty calm, and like, okay, we're fine, But we brought a canister of coffee, and we just sat there, and we had the dog with us, and the beach is completely empty, and it's just, we're on a perfect, pristine Hawaiian beach, and the moon was almost full, and Venus it was just this beautiful morning, right? And we watched the light kind of come up, because the light will come up behind the island, and it'll kind of slowly, this soft light. And I sent you guys some pictures. I mean, the soft light will start to grow, and
it looks like a painting.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It was just such a beautiful thing. But it was funny because as the light was coming up just before sunrise, this younger couple, obvious guy, they're staying at the club there. So he was obviously an NBA player, he's 6'9", 6'10", like ripped dude. And a lot of those guys, we get a lot of those pro athletes that are down there on vacation or whatever. And his wife, and she's 5'5", maybe 5'6", obvious, like cheerleader, and they're both just gorgeous and super lithe. And they have this tiny little dog, because like pro athletes for some reason always get little dogs, and they just do. And we've got this white lab, and we're sitting there, and Maria and I were sitting there, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt, hoodie, sweater cap, big fleece coat, and Maria and I are both just kind of bundled up sitting on this log. And they're in their little tank tops and stuff, and they're just running, and the little dog is running after them, and they're just smiling and stuff like that. And
they're living their best life.
Yeah. And I was looking at them, and I was funny, but because I'm at this age now where, and because I can feel And I was thinking about Tinder or Bumble and these apps where you can actually flip through and physically go, oh, she's good looking, she's not good looking. But you can also actually go, you can feel them. You can feel the energy of that other person, and Sam, I'd like to hear some thoughts on that in a second, but I could feel all the anxiety between this couple. And I was like, oh man, I could feel his anxiety and I could feel his unhappiness and I could feel them. And I was looking at it going, that I remember being in my 20s and being full of anxiety and stuff like that. But I look at that and I realize that when you build a relationship on that, I don't know anything about them, so I can't speak to anything about their actual life or whatever. But when you build it in that such a way where you find yourself living the stereotype,
which we all did.
We were talking about the club down there. There's all these billionaires, right? And we had dinner with a bunch of them, and there's all these couples, and they're in their 50s and 60s, and they're filthy rich. I mean, like I said, billionaires. They're worth billions of dollars, and the women. It was weird to watch them all just get hammered right off the bat. We go up to there's this place up there, and we go up to this beautiful station, this comfort station place, and they're serving, and it's all Camus and, Stag's Leap and wine and the guys bringing around caviar and I mean, everything. And Maria and I are just like, oh, this is amazing. The food is so good. And every time the guy brought me caviar, like, would you like another? Yes, I would like another one. Thank you. I'm just going pow, pow, pow. And these couples they're sitting there, and you can see just the misery and the women were sitting there just kind of, on their sixth glass of rosé going, just looking at each other and just not talking. The men were talking about their portfolios, of course, and their properties and how to evade taxes. Essentially, they're having this complex conversation about the best way to get away from taxes. And I'm listening in. I'm going, this is good stuff, but noticing, and Maria's trying to make conversation with the wives, and it's just not going anywhere because for them, every younger woman who's even slightly attractive is competition.
And it's a threat.
Yeah, it's a threat. And it's like Seth, you were saying, you could still feel like the child energy in a lot of them. You guys got here, you're living the stereotype, and now you have to defend it. You have to somehow try and keep this house of cards you built, and you got to keep it standing. And there's so much at stake, because every one of those dudes, and this sounds horrible to say this, but every one of those dudes has a thing going on the side, a mistress or something like that, somebody younger, because they have to. It's like they have to have it, like to feel like they're still kings of the universe. They have to have that, and so they have it, but it's so delicate because all that woman has to do, the wife has to do, is go, I want a divorce, and then like there goes half your fortune, it's gone, right? And it's all going to her, and she's gonna and it was this scary, weird situation in which I remember looking around going, I am not going to go there, because then at one point Maria goes, she said, because our boat is there, and maybe we negotiate, we get a membership at the club. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't want to hang around that. I don't want to do that. I want to find a better story to tell in her old age. I want to be that couple that is just traveling the world and is doing some good in the world and trying hard to, just leave a mark, and it's got some dirt under their fingernails. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to find a way to take, whatever love energy that Maria and I have and share it with other people, and that and be able to, I don't know, spread it out. It was weird. And again, if there's any billionaires listening to the My Pilgrimage podcast, I'm not disparaging. I am not disparaging being rich. There's nothing wrong with being rich. But when Jesus said it's harder for a rich man to find the kingdom of heaven is for a camel that crawls through the eye of a needle, that teaching was the kingdom of heaven not being this eternal thing we do after we die, but this thing that he said was present and here and now. It's the same thing in relationships. You find these rich couples and they are having a hard time finding that kingdom. It's harder for them because they should be happy. They should be content. Each one of us we're living the white picket fence thing in a way in which we got the wife, we got the 2.5 kids, Sam's got, 4 kids. And we're supposed to be at this point in our life in the storybook, we're supposed to be kind of happy, And yet here we are, all three of us on a pilgrimage podcast talking about how we're finding our contentment through this other experience, this inner experience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's just do this real quick because we are kind of pushing time here. So, Sam, why don't you start? You share kind of where you see things going for yourself, and there's no right answer. You can say whatever you want to say.
I got a skateboard lesson here I got to get to. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right on.
Speaking of aging.
Yeah. So we'll make it quick. Just 2 minutes. Each of us gets 2 minutes to talk about the future a bit.
Yeah.
Quickly, I want to reference a movie called Click. Did you see that with Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great movie.
It was so cool. And the part that was great was not that he was able to skip, fast forward with his remote. It was that his family saw what was happening during those times. And they said, yeah, you just zoned out. I mean, you were here, but he doesn't remember it. Right. And so that fear or that realization that we could do that. We could just kind of check out and just get through these moments and go, God, I just, and just tomorrow,
Yeah.
But it's, these are the days. This middle of life, these complex relationships, it's this is it, guys. And it really doesn't get better. I mean, parts of us do, but just, let's be honest, this is the day. Yeah. And I realize that, and I've got to do what's best so that I know myself. Because no matter who I end up with, no matter where my kids go, they'll always be my kids, but they'll have their own lives. I got to live with me, and the relationship to myself starts first, and from that, good relationship with others can, find fruition, and that's encouraging. And with assistance from everybody, with you guys and everybody in My Pilgrimage, we can help each other realize that.
Yeah, well said. All right, Seth, take us out, man.
Well. I think that there's a reason that the blessings come from the elders, right? One of the roles that John Philip Newell has played in my life is every time I get to see him, he gives me he always ends by giving me a blessing, and last time I saw him, I had tears in my eyes when I was leaving, and he just put his hand on my chest, he looked me in the eye, and he gave me a kiss on the cheek, and he blessed me. I've never seen someone age like him, like so gracefully, like him. And the idea is that, I think that he was saying it gets easier, you're doing the work and you've gone through the hard thing. And that's the thing is, I think that aging, the only thing that makes aging difficult is that when we refuse to do the work, we refuse to face our pain, we refuse to face our trauma. If anybody out there is doubling down on the old narratives, the religious narrative, the old white guy in the sky, all that kind of stuff, the addictions, the controls, all that kind of stuff. If that's what you're doing, aging will be a very painful process. You will constantly yearn for what you used to be able to do, what you used to look like, what you used to think of. But if you are able to just say, that's it, and this is everything, and you plunge into that middle space, kind of that hole between the hourglass, when the hourglass is coming down, and you allow that squeeze and you go through that work, then I think aging becomes quite beautiful, and there's a grace to it that's really, really lovely. But man, the idea is that everything becomes just a little bit better. Now I still got little kids, and I still drive a car that I have to start with a screwdriver, and I still live in an 800 square foot apartment in the ghetto, and I have these kind of things. So my life is a very growth oriented life. There's a lot of struggle, but man, if struggle can feel this peaceful, I can't imagine what it'd be like if I had a home, and like a car that would start when I can't imagine the kind of peace and joy that I could feel, and how much that would propel me into even better, more deeper creativity. Because if it's just ease, I'm not seeking ease. If aging is about finding an easy life, then we're screwed. We really are, because we'll just be like those billionaires that are sitting around just like freaking out. I'm curious about is God, man, how does it? I mean, if it's this good at 44, what's it gonna be like at 60? I mean, I'm gonna be like, writing a book a week kind of thing, So anyway, I'm enjoying this thing, and I hope I don't piss anybody off by talking about how much I enjoy aging. But
no, I am too, and I get the sense about all three of us actually that we're kind of there's a real piece about where we're at and where we're going, and realizing as the body diminishes and the spirit grows, that there's a kind of a rich fulfillment that comes from that, and that being here, being present in this present moment is actually, it's a bit of a rush. I watch the sunrise and the sunset just about every single day, and I'm finding such a peace in just that kind of, like, I could do this the rest of my life, unless I lose my eyes. I'm in my 80s and I can watch the sunset every day. It's beautiful. Okay, well, fellas, that was good. It was good. Well done.
Yeah.
If you guys think that we need to do a marriage part 4, let me know. Otherwise, I'm kind of going to wrap this kind of part of it up. We're going to move on to some other things. So
let's wrap it. We're good.
Okay, Sammy.
Yes.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate you making the time. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay.
Later, fellas.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
So there you have it. That completes our series, Marriage. And we're going to keep talking. Please have some comments at the Facebook page. Jump in there. What do you think about it? Are you young? Are you old? What's your life been like in terms of marriage? We'd just love to hear your reflections on kind of what's been discussed in all 3 weeks. So we're going to come back next week with the MyPilgrimage podcast, and we're going to talk about, politics. We decided to do that because politics is something that's totally taboo and nobody wants to discuss it. But when it comes to our spirit, when it comes to the growth and what we're working through, there's a lot of people working through a lot of triggers right now, and we're going to talk about it. We're not going to talk it from a Republican standpoint or a Democratic standpoint. We're going to talk about it, what it is to be a soul, to be a spirit, to be a person who's seeking health and love and joy in all of our relationships, including and first and foremost with ourselves and with the Creator. How does that look, and how does politics play into any of that? So we're going to have that discussion next week. Thanks for joining us again. Aloha, everybody.